Hi, I'm Annalee, and this is my YouTube knitting journal. My name is Annalee, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I have 3 large dogs, 2 teenage children, and 1 handsome Latino husband. Another big part of my life is knitting. I am so passionate about knitting as a hobby. I do it all the time. I love to buy yarn and to plan projects. I love to watch YouTube channels of other people talking about their knitting. And I decided to start this YouTube channel to have a way to document the hobby that I love so much and to experience it in just a slightly different way. As of a couple weeks ago, I actually had 45 unfinished sweaters in my stash. What I mean by that is that I had 45 sweater quantities of yarn for which I already had a project planned. So I had the yarn, I had a pattern picked out, and I just needed to put the sweater together. The thing is, even though I knit a lot over the past few years, my yarn buying and project planning has outpaced my actual knitting. So I set a goal to try to tackle these 45 projects in the next 3 years. It's a little bit ambitious. That makes 15 sweaters a year, but I do knit a lot and I think I can do it. I just want to make sure that I am maximizing the joy that I get out of the yarn that I have. It's exciting to buy new yarn and to plan new projects. You get that little dopamine rush, but I think that in the long term, that's not sustainable. It's silly to just have lots of yarn sitting around in storage. So I am committing to finishing these 45 projects. I think that I will have so much joy from having all of these hand knit sweaters, either for myself or to give to people that I love. And to add a little bit to the excitement factor, to that little dopamine rush, I wrote a very simple Python program that uses a random number generator to choose one of the projects in my queue, let me know what I will be casting on next, and then it updates the list. It takes that one off the list, and the next time I run the program, it selects from the remaining projects and tells me what I will be casting on next. So a couple weeks ago, I ran that program for the first time, and the project that was selected for me is the Korshavn Slipover by Tvinni. I hope I'm getting that name at least somewhat correct. It was a great project to be the first one in this endeavor because it was a very quick project, got me off to a great start, and gave me some momentum. I have finished it and am wearing it today. So again, this is the Korshavn Slipover by Tvinni, and I love it. I am so pleased with how it turned out. Now the yarn that I used is called Jamieson's of Shetland Heather. So it's 100% Shetland wool. It's about an Aran weight yarn, and it was a little bit, I would say, stiff or sticky as I was working with it. Now that it's been blocked, it has softened up a bit, but I can tell that this is hardy wool. This feels to me like it's going to last forever, like it's barely going to pill, and it's just going to stay nice for a long time. I love it. Now the pattern called for a slightly heavier weight yarn, and it called for it to be held together with a strand of silk mohair. But I decided not to use the silk mohair. So my gauge was a little bit smaller than what the pattern specified. So in order to adjust for that, I used slightly smaller needles, and I used a larger pattern size than I otherwise would have in order to get a garment that would fit me. One adjustment that I made is that I wanted the front and the back to both be symmetrical with this motif. So there's this basket weave motif that I really like, but I noticed that at least for my size in the pattern, it wasn't going to be symmetrical. On one side at the edge, there was going to be a full square, but on the other side at the edge, there was going to be just a partial square, and it would have been the same on the back. So my solution was to adjust the number of stitches allocated to the front and the number of stitches allocated to the back a little bit differently than specified in the pattern. So instead of having the same number of stitches front and back, I have slightly more stitches on the back of my slipover or vest than I do on the front. And I think that worked out really well. This lack of symmetry may not have bothered some people, but I really wanted for the pattern to be symmetrical, and it was an easy enough fix that I went ahead and did it. So I'm very pleased with how it turned out. It looks like this designer has several other patterns that use this same motif. I think a balaclava, a sweater, a cardigan, and I definitely love it. And, you know, it's one that I would consider using again in another project. In all, this sweater took me probably around 20 hours of work to make. It was about 20,000 stitches. And I know this because every time I make a project, I create an Excel spreadsheet where I lay out the steps of the pattern and how many stitches there are row by row. I really like doing that because it's a nice thing for me to follow. I very rarely print out patterns. I just transfer the pattern information into an Excel spreadsheet and follow along there. It gives me an idea of how much yarn it's going to take to finish the project, given the number of stitches and how much yarn I've used so far. That can be nice when you're playing yarn chicken. It's just something that I've started doing, a way of documenting my projects, which I guess makes sense given that I'm kind of a math nerd and I work with Excel quite a bit at my job, less so than I used to, but instead of having a written project journal, I use my Excel spreadsheets. Now that I have finished this project, I only have 44 unfinished sweaters in my stash. So at the end of today's episode, I'm going to run my program again and learn what my next project will be. And I'm very excited to know what I will be casting on tonight. Another thing that I want to show off today is this new plant that I got. Now, I am not very knowledgeable about plants. I wouldn't say I'm a huge lover of plants necessarily, although I do love them. But my son is. Yesterday we were in downtown Seattle, actually more in the Capitol Hill area, and we saw a shop that was called The Plant Shop. Literally, that was the name of the store. They gave us this little sticker. Because my son loves plants we went inside to look around. We did get him a couple of plants, and I spotted this guy, which I hope I can pronounce this right. I asked my son several times. It's called a calathea. And I just think it's the coolest looking thing. These leaves look like somebody painted leaves on them. This is the natural coloring of the plant. It's just the coolest thing. I just fell in love with this immediately. And so I asked my son, if I get this plant for myself, will you help me take care of it so I can keep it close and I can smile every time I look at the leaves on leaves look. I mentioned that my son really loves plants. He has a lot of cacti and succulents. And we asked him, how many do you think you have in total? Because he has some here and then some at his dad's house. And he said probably 45. And for a quick minute, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this kid found a hobby he loves and he's got 45 plants. How absurd. But of course, it's very ironic. He obviously got this tendency from his mother, who had 45 sweater quantities of yarn sitting in her stash. Although now I am down to just 44 unknit sweaters, and he is up to 47 plants if you count the 2 that we got him yesterday. By the way, if my water looks cloudy, it's not dirty. It's because I have some lemon in there. In case you haven't inferred by the name of this channel, I do love lemon. I put it on almost everything that I eat. I have, in addition to this slipover or vest, 3 other finished objects that I would like to share. That means that I have finished 4 projects in the month of January. Technically, I did finish a pair of socks early in the month, but I had started them and done the majority of the knitting in December of 2022. So I'm kind of counting those as a 2022 project, and everything that I started and now have finished in 2023 as a 2023 project. Okay, first up, this is actually a pair of coordinating projects. I have 2 kind of folded brim beanies, and as you can see, they are intended to be in the colors of 2 NFL teams. My daughter's boyfriend plays football for the high school, and his favorite NFL team is the Denver Broncos. My daughter, to my knowledge, doesn't have a favorite NFL team necessarily, at least not one that she talks about. But of course, there's this connection to Seattle, and here in Seattle, people seem to really love their Seahawks. So when I saw that the only 2 colorways left of this yarn, which is called Cascade Color Duo, the only 2 colors left on clearance at Webs, which is yarn.com, were Denver and Seattle. I thought it would be fun to get those 2 colors and make kind of matching or coordinating hats for my daughter and her boyfriend. And then just for fun, I found some patches from a shop on Etsy so that it is very clear that they are NFL themed hats. Now the yarn is a blend of mostly alpaca, some wool. I wasn't sure how well the hats would hold their shape and thought I might have to tack down the brim, but after blocking, it seems to hold really well. From what I can tell, this style of hat is pretty popular right now. I see them all over the place. The rolled brim and then a little bit of a poof at the top so it sticks up a little bit. And I'm happy with how these turned out. I did not use a pattern. I just improvised. The brim ends up being a couple layers thick because it's kind of doubled and then folded over. From what I can tell, the pattern Oslo hat by Petite Knit is a very similar design. I've seen a lot of knitters make that pattern. I don't own that pattern. I just decided to improvise these. Now, part of the reason that I made these hats, this project at this time, is because my mom and I have developed a routine where a couple times a week we have early morning Skype dates where we chat and we knit together. My mom is the one that first taught me the very, very basics of knitting. But at this point, I think I know more about knitting than she does, and she has asked me to help her learn more. So she wanted to make a hat for someone that was having a birthday, asked if I could show her how to make a hat. So I knit these along with her. She has finished hers. She just made one, and from what I understand, it was very well received by its recipient. The next finished object that I want to share, I cast on New Year's Day. This was my New Year's Day cast on. And there is no way that the camera is going to do justice to this beautiful yarn. So this yarn is called Cascade Luminosa. It's by Cascade Yarns. It's called Luminosa. And I think it's a discontinued yarn now, which is a shame because this yarn was a dream to work with. I loved it. The way the yarn is constructed is that it's a mesh tube made from a slightly shiny ruby red color. I think it's made out of viscose. And then it's filled with these fluffy black alpaca fibers. So the result is an extremely lightweight yarn because the fibers weren't spun together. They were blown inside this mesh tube. And then it's got a little bit of a shine if you look at it at just the right angle, but it's also very, very fluffy and soft as can be. I did not use a pattern for this sweater. It's a pretty simple top-down circular yoke, but this project was inspired by one that I saw somebody else make. One of the channels that I like watching on YouTube, because I love watching others talk about their knitting, is called Mare Makes with Tara Marie. She made a sweater out of the same yarn in a different colorway, and I loved it when I saw it. Decided I needed to have one for myself, so I would shamelessly copy her. And I happened to have some of this yarn in my stash. Tara Marie, I believe, used a pattern, the DRK Everyday Sweater, but I copied some of the elements that I saw that she had, such as the broken rib at the hem. I am absolutely thrilled with this sweater. It fits me perfectly. I love the length. I love how lightweight it is. I love how warm it is and how cozy it is. And I say this after almost every project that I finish, but this is my new favorite sweater. Alrighty, so that was 4 finished objects in the month of January. Not bad. Only 1 project from my list, so I'll have to, I guess, knock a few more off if I want to keep at the rate of 15 per year, but I think I'm going to get there. I do have an additional 2 projects that are on my needles, which I will share briefly. The first is another project that I've been working on with my mom. And this is a pair of socks. So we actually started these, then put them on pause in order to make the hats, and we have picked them back up. Tomorrow morning when I call her, we are going to start the heel. Now these are being made top down. The yarn is what makes them very special. The yarn is from Regia in collaboration with Wool and the Gang, and it's called Kinda Magic sock yarn, because if you knit at just the right tension, the colors are supposed to align up and give you leopard spots. And hopefully that comes through. I really like the way it looks. They're a little bit tricky because you do have to knit at just the right tension. But I thought it was the coolest idea ever when I first saw this yarn. And once I saw it go on clearance at Little Knits, which it's an online store, but they are actually located here in Seattle. They sell a lot of, from what I can tell, like overstock and discontinued yarns. They had a really good price on this kind of yarn, so I bought an absurd amount, much of which I have given away, but I've also made a few pairs of socks, and I have more to give away or to make more leopard print socks for people in my life. So yes, they're coming along nicely. We will start the heel tomorrow and work our way down to the toe. The second work in progress that I have on my needles is a project that when I saw it, I fell in love, decided that I had to have one, same color and everything as what the designer had. This is going to be the Agnete Cardigan by Petite Knit. So last time I did, last time I did a video, I had almost finished the swatch. I have now finished the swatch. I am using wool that's called for in the pattern. It's from Isager or Isager, and it's called Tvinni. It's a very fine, like light fingering weight wool. And then it's being held with a strand of silk mohair. And the brand that was called for in the pattern, of the silk mohair, I wasn't able to find it available in the US, so I am using Rowan Kidsilk Haze. But I think that the color looks great. They look great together. So my swatch ended up being spot on as far as gauge. Absolutely perfect, what was called for in the pattern. So I started the back of the cardigan. It's definitely going to be a complicated kind of long-term project. The designer herself described it on her Instagram as, I think, a labor of love. She mentioned that it's a complicated pattern. It took a long time. It's knit in brioche, which takes a long time because you essentially have to do 2 passes for every stitch that you see. And it's knit on pretty small needles. These are 3mm needles. And the construction is something that I haven't done before. This is not the kind of thing I'd be able to figure out on my own, at least not at this point, because it's not a raglan. This is the back of the cardigan, and then eventually I'm going to pick up along the shoulders to form the front. And then once I've knit the cardigan, I will pick up around the sleeves and knit the sleeves down. So the pattern is something like 14 pages long and just, walls of text. But it will be a fun, challenging project. Petite Knit is obviously a very popular designer, but I haven't really seen anybody talk about making this pattern. but I'm sure I can't be the only one. It is beautiful. It's going to take me months, but that's okay. I'm just going to kind of work on it here and there in the background, and in a year from now, I will have a fabulous brioche cardigan in this beautiful shade of red. Well, those are my only 2 works in progress, and I am itching to start another. So I'm going to go get my computer, and I am going to run my Python program, which will tell me what project I can cast on tonight. I'm so excited for this. All right, just gotta wait for the computer to wake up. Oh, go figure, it has to do some updates. Restarting. Okay, it's ready. I'm going to show you my screen so you can watch with me. I can't wait. Alrighty, my next project is Stripes Gone Crazy, designed by Alpha Knits, using the lovely yarn Miss Babs Yummy 2-ply. Okay, this is going to be a fun project. It has a really interesting stripe design where the stripes are kind of slanted and varying widths. From what I understand, it's created with short rows. I'm really excited to see just how the construction works. It's going to be knit with fingering yarn, so it might take me a while. The yarn that I have is a set of mini skeins from Miss Babs, as well as a couple of full 100-gram skeins to use for the main color. And I think I might be a little bit short on yarn. So my plan is not to make this an Annalee sized cardigan. I'm going to make a smaller size to make sure that I have enough yarn. And then I will find someone in my life that is smaller than I am that can enjoy wearing the finished product. Thank you so much for being here with me. I am having so much fun creating these videos. I'm doing it mostly for myself, but it is pretty fun to see that there are others out there that are interested in following along with me and see what I am making. I look forward to making another video soon. I will tell you how it went casting on my new project, the Stripes Gone Crazy cardigan by Alpha Knits. Until then, bye.